Time being 10:31 a.m. on December 8th, 2021. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the American Rescue Plan Committee of Kane County. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bates,
Bates here.
Brown,
I'm here.
Bras, Gums,
Gums here.
Kenyon,
Yes, here.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Martin,
Martin present.
Molina,
Molina present.
Strothman,
Strathman here.
Pepe,
Deppie here.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez here. Someone ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes of November 24th, 2021.
So moved.
Are there any comments, corrections, additions, or deletions to those minutes? Hearing no objections, the minutes are approved. Public comment. I do have one person signed up to speak for public comment and some in the audience who may wish to speak. So I will start with Mr. Joe Jackson. Do we have Joe Jackson? I don't see him here in person. I don't know if he's online. Okay. Ma'am, if you would come to the podium.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Cheryl Gray. I'm a resident of St. Charles, and I coordinate the soup kitchens that are in Elgin. And I do that on behalf of my church, Highland Avenue Church of the Brethren in Elgin. I want to say that just like you, I've been at every one of your meetings, either in person or virtually, and I've seen the change in this committee. I don't know if you've felt that change, but I've seen a committee go from being very concerned about the county offices to being very concerned about the county residents. And I so appreciate the listening sessions and the deep listening that has occurred and your comments back to your learning from those listening sessions. So that's an important thing for a resident to be able to communicate back to you, is how much I appreciate your dedication to your task. The soup kettles in Elgin are too small to be funded now. You've made those decisions. I can see where it's been an appropriate decision on behalf of that, of the process. You don't want to spend more in administration than you do actually getting funds out there for people to be helped. So I concur with the way that and the direction that the committee is going. We only have a budget of $40,000, but our in-kind operations are at over $600,000. So we have significant needs in Elgin. One of the ways that you could help meet that need is through your contribution of our funds to the Northern Illinois Food Bank. I heard early on that there might be a special fund request for NIFB, but I haven't heard anything since that time. So Chairman Sanchez, if you could include that in your updates, I would very much appreciate that. I thank you for all of the work that you do on behalf of the county.
Thank you, Ms. Gray.
You're welcome.
Other speakers? Just come up to the podium and say your name.
Good morning. My name is Gloria Kelly, and I'm the Executive Director over at CASA King County. It's nice to be with you all this morning, and I'm seeing a lot of wonderful familiar faces. I've been fortunate to be the Executive Director of CASA for nearly 15 years. And as many of you know the significance of our program and the work that we do in helping kids in the foster care system. And when I say they're life-changing, they are life-changing. Recently, we put a proposal to be considered through the American Rescue Plan Committee for $1 million for 2 years. So $500,000 next year and $500,000 in 2023. And the reason and need for this is so great. And I'm going to be short because I know you have a lot on the agenda. But this year and the last year, especially after COVID, we've seen, and there has been an experience of more hotline calls coming in, which is a good thing because now kids are being seen, cases are coming in. We have jumped hoops for the court system since the inception of this program in 1988. As a guardian ad litem, we have our own attorneys on staff. We have supervisors to help case manage CASA volunteers, and these are no ordinary people, they're extraordinary. We have now trained this year double what we've ever trained in CASAs. And I may have 22 full-time staff members, full-time, but I have 250 Casa GL volunteers advocating for the best interests of children every day in court. So much so that last year we had 6 supervisors full-time, and right now we only have 6 and we're 3 short, managing over 50 cases per child. It is way too much, and it's not in a healthy environment and or for my team. So this proposal will allow us to receive another 2 supervisors and also the sustainability. And Mr. Drew Freeze and I were just talking about that, and hiring another development person to help us sustain the fundraising so that if awarded the $1 million, we would be able to do just that in serving near 600 kids each year. So remember, when CASAs come into the program, they go through a 50-hour training. They go through background checks, fingerprints, everything for those who are business owners. Again, 22 staff. We have to do the same thing, if not more so, for the 250 Casa GL volunteers. It is quite an operation. So with this money, we would be able to hire those extra supervisors, another development professional, and really make sure all those needs are met. I'd love to open any questions for any of you if you have them.
What's your yearly budget?
Right now, with in kind, it's 3.5 million,
And you're asking for $500,000 over
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kelly, for
Thank
coming to
you.
speak to us today.
Thank you, Chairman Sanchez.
Would anyone else like to deliver a public comment at this time on agenda or non-agenda items? Okay, and we shall move on. Chairman's comments, I have none today. It's always good to have the placeholder, but discussion items. Program manager update, Mr. Phillips. Where's he sitting at? Where's he at? Oh, he's right in front of me.
Right here. So, program manager update. I appreciate the comments that some of them jived with where we are exactly. And where we are right now is we're days away from having the application available in public,
Portal open,
portal open.
days.
We are days away. We're going to have this.
I
this
don't
is a
mean to,
conversation
I don't mean
about-
to say that
right on.
harshly, but
Yeah. So, however, there are some housekeeping items that we need to take care of as lessons learned that we're discovering from CARES, which we're in a different situation, but very similar. We're not in a compressed period of time. As a matter of fact, just before the meeting, we had developments from the state's attorney regarding some legal issues as far as the notice for opportunity. We're having those conversations right now. I think Mr. Sanchez is going to have a conversation after this meeting. Where we are right now is we have a notice of opportunity of almost ready to be posted, and we have to do that within 48 hours prior to launching the portal. Now, there are some items within the notice for opportunity that need to be elemental to that notice that requires state's attorney checking our authority to post without a vote. Now, there's some assumptions that we have made based on CARES and how we made the notice in CARES, how we launched the portal for CARES, and that was all based on a compressed period of time and in a vacuum, so to speak. We don't have those constraints now, and we have to take advantage of them. So we're in a moment of extreme fluidity, but with extreme progress and movement since Ernst & Young has been on the team, which is now we're in our 3rd week. And I will tell you that we're working weekends, nights on weekends, nights during the week. And we are in an intense period of discovery. And with that intense period of discovery, we are having exponential growth and progress being made. So what I will say to you is we are days away from having distributed to you, and then me following up and Mr. Sanchez following up to get input on the documents we are about to release, which tied directly to the application for the community support grant and those funds going out. Now, we also have some immovable constraints with the holidays, and there's some appropriate timing for the holidays for the notice. The notice has to balance with people's availability to get the notice, digest the notice, and then react, which would be, if they're eligible, apply for a grant. So I know I'm hedging on giving you a specific date. I believe we're probably mid next week, Wednesday, a week from today, that I will be in a position to know for certain, and Mr. Sanchez with the state's attorney's guidance, if we have a go to launch the notice for opportunity and then launch the application. Now we have to do this thoughtfully, because what is the intent? The intent is to provide an opportunity for people to apply for funds. We have a healthcare one that's already been identified, that Michael Isaacson, who is also taking his time, and I appreciate both he and Vince Coyle taking time out of their schedules to dedicate specifically to participating in working calls with Ernst & Young and us. We collectively as a group, state's attorney, health department, our group, and thus the committee, and Ernst & Young are literally about 5 days away from having this. If Christmas and the other holidays and New Year's were not coming up, we could post without considering those dates. But we have to be thoughtful in doing that. So therefore, I think that's part of the discussion that we want to have.
Ms. Bates.
So I don't get it. You're bringing up the holidays. It almost sounds like we should wait till after the holidays, or I don't understand the concern.
The concern is,
People might not be
Right.
there to fill out the form, so.
because, well, the notice has to be public,
Uh-huh,
and if we have to consider that people are going to be on vacation,
yeah,
people are going to be out of pocket and not available to read a notice. Some people may be out of the country. So as a matter of public notice, and Vince may be able to speak to this better than I, as a matter of fact, I'm sure he could. But we have to have these considerations as what is an appropriate 48 hours. 48 hours during a period of the year when we know that people are not available is a different kind of notice than if we know that we have people's
it
attention.
would be very frustrating to be, just to stepped out of the office
we-
for a vacation of a week and a half.
And the notice was posted for 48 hours, you were out.
Yeah.
And you
Should
came
we
back and
wait
found that the
until
notice.
January 3rd then,
Not if we can get it done sooner.
all right.
As long as we're going to be before that kind of buffer.
Okay, so this is the 8th, my birthday, my King County birthday. So does that mean that if we can't get it out by December 20th, that we will wait till January 3rd? Can we determine that? What's a good day and what's a bad day?
I don't know what that date would be, but that's
Okay, I'm
the basic
suggesting.
concept.
We
yes.
we have in conversation, Ernst & Young and I, Gary Burke, a partner, and Will Miller, the senior manager, have discussed, and we actually spoke, because there's a committee meeting on the 22nd, we
Uh-huh.
spoke about that date. And Gary said, no, that is a bad date. If we get up to the 22nd, absolutely not.
Bad, too late.
It is inappropriate.
So what did he say was appropriate?
Either we expedite and try to launch days prior to that, or
How many days? I feel like
Oh, we need-
Perry
we need-
Mason.
we need an appropriate 48 hours.
Yeah,
So I would say that if we have a holiday on the 25th and people are prepping for that holiday, then these are, this is not hard and fast.
Right.
So some people may be going out of town the weekend prior.
Yep.
So is that week out of bounds? Is that appropriate?
Ms.
Yeah.
Bates, if you need an actual date from Ernst and Young, we'll get you that. But otherwise, we're gonna try and get that out as soon as possible,
All right.
before the holidays.
Okay.
That's the idea.
It
Mr.
looks to
Martin?
me like the
I have a-
15th would be the deadline before.
I have a, I have a question. And maybe I just need my recollection refreshed. Did we determine that we were going to handle these on a first come, first served basis?
I think
I-
what we talked about was that we would not.
Okay, well,
Um,
if we're not doing it, if we're evaluating them as a whole,
Mhm.
wouldn't the solution to the concern about the holidays just simply be open the portal as soon as we can and extend the date to accommodate? I mean, December is a dismal month to expect anybody to accomplish anything. I mean, I remember when I was still
Yeah.
doing things of value in this world, trying to get public bodies to meet and people together and people not on vacation. This is the national month of ecstasy and it doesn't happen. But why can't we just extend? Why can't we accommodate that fact by just simply extending the period for making applications? And then because to me, the 48-hour notice is, unless I'm missing something, it's irrelevant. I mean, we need to do it to meet a technical requirement, but I would hope
And I
that.
can answer that, actually. This came up yesterday in our call. We can't extend that deadline. So
January 15th, for
we
example.
can.
Why not?
We can extend the deadline if we need to, especially with CARES Act. That happened last time. We had people coming in saying this application process is very arduous and we need more time. We did grant that time extension. Hopefully this process will be much more simplified and streamlined for our applicants. But if we find out, the holidays really cut into some of the work time they needed to devote
Okay.
to the application, and we're getting feedback from applicants that they need more time, we can give them
And
that.
it's not
Absolutely.
first come, first served, so I will stand down. So,
Madam Chair.
Oh.
Hold on. Did that answer your question, Mr. Martin?
Yeah, I mean, I guess then my presumption was correct, that we could just simply get it opened up as soon as we can. And if
Okay,
we're disappointed, as we probably will be, on the vibrancy of applications made during the second half of December,
yeah.
well, then we just extend it. But getting it open is the task, and the timing of it, to me, to repeat, which I do a lot of, I guess, the timing to me is irrelevant when we open it. Let's just get it done as soon as possible and then extend the date.
Madam Chair?
Traditionally, and we have Ms. Kelly here, and she can confirm this as a not-for-profit executive director. When a grant application opportunity is open, traditionally, it's not a 48-hour ask. Usually, it'll be posted and you have 3 weeks, very
Oh,
much like if you're applying for so we're not looking at having a 48-hour window to complete an application, are we?
No, it's just the notice. It's just the alert that to these
coming.
agencies that it's coming, it's going to open in 2 days. That's what the 48-hour lead
Well,
time
then-
is all about. So if it's going to be on December 23rd that the portal can open, maybe we'll just wait till the following week after the holiday passes. But I think we'll have it open before then.
For the application.
This is the notice. This is the technical aspect. The notice,
Okay.
we want 48 hours. The application opens, they'll have at least 30 days.
I mean, the notice doesn't mean anything.
That's-
It meets a legal requirement,
Yes,
Yeah.
and so who cares? Let's, whatever we need to do, let's just
I
get
agree.
the
Can't they go
notice
hand in hand?
published and have it done, and then look at the application rate, and if we need to extend it, extend it. But it's, at least to me, it looks like we're dwelling on a topic that
okay,
has no relevance to the
right.
project, because we're meeting a technical requirement. Let's just meet it and move on.
So all right, so the process is, I'm trying to catch up. 48-hour notice, we publish something, King County Connects, we put it on our portal, we put a press announcement out. It's opened up, yay. And then we're going to put the applications after that 48-hour notice. The applications are going to be opened on 2 days later. And that's going to extend for whatever period of time we feel is appropriate, which has to be several weeks. And then it closes. All applications are due on a specific date. Let's tentatively say January 8th, whatever date that may be. And then that closes, and then the grants are reviewed, applications are reviewed, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
one more
Ms.
point.
Bates.
I think if we announce on, say, if we open on, say, December 15th, and we have some big announcements, I think we need to do those big announcements on January 3rd also for the people who missed it on, if possible. You know, just get Kane County to announce it again.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Well,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Brown?
suggestion to try to simplify things. And I know things always seem to have a tendency to get pushed back, but in allowing for things to get pushed back, if we were to assume that we could make this announcement next week, so assuming somewhere's around the 15th, I agree with Mr. Martin, it's a technicality just to get that notice out there. I would think then that we could put the deadline for all applications to be in an effort to not try to look to see what we have and then extend the time. Let's just give the time now. So if we put the applications out there to be completed and submitted by the 14th, you have a meeting scheduled for the 19th, we can put it to bed. That gives everybody ample amount of time to fill out their applications for further notice, so on and so forth. I'm just trying to get some finality to this
Yeah,
instead
that's
of
what I was trying to
conversation.
do. That's what I was trying to do. Just, let's put some nail in the wall.
As soon as we have a firm date on when the portal is open, we'll let you know. Yeah.
Okay. I know there's technical difficulties.
Yeah, the notice is just,
Always.
it's, as many have mentioned, it's just kind of a tech formality. And so it's really a small part of the things we're considering.
Well, actually, an important element about the notice is that the notice is going to contain our criteria
Yeah.
for
it's
the
not nothing.
application, which has already been established with the resolution for the community support grant. But we still must follow a process that is appropriate to build this program, to launch, because we're going to have multiple applications potentially. This application that we're building right now is specific and related to the $4 million community support grant and its various recipients, some of which have been worked with and identified. But the other applications and those processes are going to be built off of this one. So we must establish this and get the finality of this process so that we're not on for other projects continuing to come back and have these discussions. So the fact that we should have a concluded conversation regarding the appropriateness and how we're going to use the NOFO, the notice for opportunity.
No foe.
And it is an opportunity.
Okay.
So we're providing people opportunity. If we're going to provide the opportunity, we must do it appropriately and with intent. And then that will be our process going forward. It's established. The county does not have these processes. We do not have a department to do this. We are establishing this right now. And there are multiple interdependencies.
Mhm.
And Vince and I were speaking this morning, Vince Coyle, of the state's attorney's office, is that if we could pull back the curtain and show exactly what we are working on and doing to get to this point. And to Mr. Brown brought something up to me last week, and it's a fair observation that when we created the binder and gave the binders to folks, he noticed that I had a reference, and I have a reference here to see page 22, actually 26,806. And this is only a portion of the documents that we are relying upon to do this. So it is involved and it's intricate. And this is all part of it.
Mr. Martin?
I don't want my comments to be misunderstood. I want to be technically correct in what we do. I just don't want to diddle around and wait until the end of time because we're going to give the time after the application is done. So we've had a lot of discussion on the appropriate day for the notice. To me, the appropriate day for the notice is the day after we conclude the technical requirements that we need to put it in. And I don't care if that's Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve or Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. Let's just get the notice out
Okay.
do it correctly, I understand the need to be correct. And I understand we're going to build on this for future stuff. Just get it done. And to Mavis's point about giving us other notices and everything, we need to make a fair effort at making a notice, but I don't want to assume the responsibility that we need to go out and knock on a charity's door and say, you need to apply here. We're going to make this money available. If people aren't diligent enough or don't have the capacity to find out that this money is available, that's a comment to me on whether they operate well enough to receive the funds and to move ahead. So let's just do what we ought to do. Let's get the notice out. Let's give enough time so it coordinates with meeting dates or whatever we want to do. But let's start the process, whatever day we can start it.
I think we've got our marching orders. Ms. Bates, do you have something relevant?
Yes, and I'd like to ask the committee, do we want to see I think I would like to see the questions that are going to go on the portal before it opens up. Is that a good idea or not? To give the committee a chance to review I've
I think
applied for
we
grants
could organize
before,
to
so-
do that outside of committee individually.
Okay,
Yeah. Mr. Shepro.
Are those questions going to be created by us, or they're like a list that the government says you have to ask these questions?
We're creating it in conjunction with Ernst & Young based on what the Treasury requires for reporting and also what we require. And that's it. So, yeah, we can give everybody a look.
thank you, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Let's not forget that a camel is a horse designed by a committee.
Trying for a camel with only one hump instead of two. So I think that's really,
That's not going to stop me, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, to that point, though, the criteria are already established in the resolution.
Yeah.
So we are using that criteria as established in the resolution, and the application portal is you're not going to see anything new in it. We have taken the application that we created for the internal requests
Okay.
and have crafted and edited that
Mhm.
and filtered it down and gotten input from various organizations and people on their applications, what they're doing. And we're taking those considerations. Madam Chair has given me some referrals of some folks that in the area to talk to. Elk Grove has an Elk Grove Cares Act, and I've been in touch with the person running that.
What was that one?
Elk Grove Cares. And that's specific, that grant is specific to opioids, but are these funding sources also. And that's another thing we're finding as we're doing this. We're discovering other funding sources that have appropriate resources
Mhm.
that we can use for some of our internal asks that we're not going to have to consider for this. So this is a multiple discipline effort that we're going through to get to this point.
I
So
just want to peek.
absolutely.
all right, Mr. Phillips, do you have anything else for update? All right, thank you very much. Okay, the next discussion item, considerations for ARPA budget. I'm going to have to postpone until the next meeting. In conversation with Ernst & Young and how we're going to develop our overall budget, how much money we want to put into what buckets. They suggested pretty strongly that we at least survey the committee members on their ideas to get us a little closer to what we want. And as a comparison with the maps process, we had a demographer would draw some lines and board members would say, hey, why would you split up this neighborhood, that neighborhood? Well, because they don't have that on the ground information that is in all of our heads. And so with the survey idea Ernst & Young had, it was along those lines. Let's not start with just nothing and give you guys some suggestions. Let's see what you guys have in your heads. Start there, use that as a conversational piece to go forward. So we were hoping to have that ready for either today or shortly after, but it had to get put on the back burner just because some of the other things that we've been working on that were requiring a lot of time and effort. So for the next meeting on the 22nd, we'll have that conversation in full. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering, of the 78 internal applications that were interviewed by the people on the committee, those have all been submitted to you or to Peter?
Yeah, and we have them. Ernst and Young has them too. They're not going through and reviewing them right now. They've looked at them just to see what's there to get an idea of what we might be considering. And but as of right now, they suggested that before we start to process those requests, we come up with our overall budget, or at least desired budget.
You know, and I thought initially the idea was we were going to interview 15 or 16 different internal requests, submit those to the committee. Then the committee was going to give us a summarization of all those requests and what the individuals on the committee thought were proper requests. I guess what I'm wondering is, when are we going to get that to review?
Well, that's a good question. And again, it gets back to just in working with Ernst and Young, they suggested that we first come up with some budget numbers, because we don't know if we have 15 requests that are submitted by this committee. What do we have enough money to fund all of those? How are we going to allocate all of the money?
Well, if I'm correct, I think the internal request, the minimum and maximum, if everybody got everything they asked for, was between 17 million and 64 million. So I don't understand why we can't get some kind of a cumulative report on what the committee members found out from their interviews with the different departments. I mean, that'll give us an idea. If it's 45 million or whatever, maybe that's what we as a committee would vote on then and say, yeah, these are the recommendations and we like this or we don't like that. But we need to be able to study those before we can vote on those. And if we don't get those, we're just delaying the process even further.
Well, so we assumed everyone should be completed with their reviews at this point. I think that was kind of the assumption by December 8th. So at the next meeting, my thought was we would start talking about that. And Peter and I haven't gone over that yet because we've been so focused on the portal application and working with Ernst and Young. So I don't have a firm answer for you on exactly what that's going to look like. But at the next meeting, that's my intention, at least, is to get that conversation started, to, you know, get some reports from board members and see what we want to do. But I did have something I wanted to throw in the conversation today that it kind of gets ahead of that. So one moment, please. So I'm going to refer to this document, which we've all seen. And this is the projections that Joe Onzik created for us that show us the potential amounts that we'll be able to claim for lost revenue and for personnel, payroll reimbursement. So I wanted to use this just as a backdrop because this has come up in conversation with Ernst and Young. It's sort of a matter of philosophy. So I want to kind of go around and get your guys' perspectives on this. When you look at this chart, do you see that is the philosophy that the lost revenue, all that $63.4 million is intended to go into the county in the form of, like, say, like how we used it for our budget? Is that what we want to do with that? And then everything else we want to fund would come from that to be determined 17 million at the bottom? Or what do we want to do? And so when we talk about department requests, I think that's really the question I will ask everyone. Where do you see the department requests, however much we're going to fund, coming from? Do you see that coming from within the lost revenue component, from payroll reimbursement, or from that 17 million? And just as another little addition to the conversation piece, doing the math, we collected $7.4 million in lost revenue recoupment for 2020, and 60% of that went to actual lost revenues, is around $4.1 million. If that number were to hold true, then you could assume that 60% of $63 million is what we would actually need to fill in lost revenues in our budget. Mr. Leonard probably has done the head math and knows how much that
36
leaves
million.
behind. So just things to consider. So that's the question I wanted to ask. When we talk about department requests, where do you see that money coming from? So I'll start with Mr. Brown, just because we want to collect this information from the committee about our philosophy on spending.
Well, I think that's Brown speaking. I think that's a hard question to answer because with lost revenue, you can move it around any way you want, basically internally. The TDBs can be moved around any way you want internally. I think more importantly, I would agree with Mr. Leonard that we really ought to be taking a look at these, and we have all taken a look at these internal requests, and we ought to decide what we want to fund out of that and where it comes from really can be moved around however you want to move it around, the way I see it. I think to go back to the item we were just talking about with the mental health and everything, you know, we just keep delaying. And I understand, Peter, that there's a lot, an awful lot that we don't know that you have to go by in order to comply with the program. But I think we just have to move forward and make some decisions. And, you know, if we look at these internal requests and we come up with 40 million, it can come from somewhere. A portion out of it, 17 million, and a portion out of the 63 million. I don't know. But we just have to decide what we think is a legitimate expense and what isn't.
Mr. Martin, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm leaning on Mr. Leonard's comments, and I agree with what Mr. Brown's saying. I think that this is the wrong time to be talking about what we want to do with our flexibility. Until we know the demand or the asks, then we have no backdrop for making a decision. And I'm going to guess, but when we all make our reports on the administrators we met with, that we're going to say they were well considered and worthy of consideration. Man, I can't see me looking at one of the people that I don't know who Drew interviewed, say, well, item 4, I think I don't want that. I think if all of us should have had conversations with people saying, you know, where are these prioritized? You know, what do you think? What do you have as the strongest consideration? Put those in front. And then we just got to figure out a dollar figure. And we have to figure out what percentage of those we're going to cover. And if we're going to just do it all on a percentage basis, or if one department asks for 1,000 and one department asks for 1 million, are we going to give the 1,000 just because it's too small to consider about or whatever? But I can't offer any opinion on what I want to do with this until I know what the ask is. And we don't have the county's ask, and we don't have the not-for-profits ask. So to me, I have no comment on.
Okay, yeah. And so again, this come up in conversation with Ernst & Young. They just want to know, is that lost revenue something we think is really just going to go into our budget needs primarily? Or is that something that, again, can have multiple uses? We can defund department requests with it.
Well,
And that's what I'm hearing.
But
from
that's
both of
their
you gentlemen.
request, and what 2 people have said, 3 people have said is, we don't know, because we don't know what the ask is yet.
Okay, so let me ask another. Is there anyone who would agree with the idea that the revenue should be only used for internal budgetary needs?
Would you spell that out just a little bit better for me? Do you mean the?
Would
recruitment
anyone agree with the idea that lost revenue should only be used for budgetary needs?
Like general fund?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? No.
Okay. And again, this is just, it's questions that come up that they want direct clarification from the committee on, so that they understand what direction we're moving in. Ms. Frost.
Frost speaking. Yeah, just listening to some of the numbers that were thrown out here. I know Bill gave us some rough ideas on the total of the internal requests and that, but I mean, I ran some quick numbers, and I might be off here, but I'm just personally looking at the whole 103 million.
Mhm.
You know, I'm thinking lost revenue 40%, internal requests 40%, and external requests 20%. Just to throw something out there.
Getting ahead of the survey, man.
40
Madam Chair, did you have a comment?
And Mr. Berman can confirm if my memory is correct, but I believe you just all voted on a budget that moved the $16,630,209 to balance next year's budget. So that decision was made out of lost revenue. So it's just a matter if you're going to be moving 22 and 23's money forward to do the same thing. Just throwing it out there.
A good point. And to add to that also, that 17 million and that 22 million in the following year's revenue reimbursement, we wouldn't be able to see those monies until the following year. So that 16 million, we won't see until February or March, I believe, when finance can go through all of the actual losses and plug everything in
For 22.
to do the formula for
22.
for
The
our recoupment.
21, I believe, has already been passed through.
But to actually get the actual numbers, to process everything with the lost revenue.
Again,
Joe indicated it'll probably be February or March when that happens. So that's why the 2022 17 million, we won't see until the beginning of 23. And that 22 million, we won't see until the beginning of 24. So just. the
But those are not
complexities.
approved yet.
No, those are projections.
These numbers are not
Those
approved.
projections.
they're projections.
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 points I'd like to make here. Number one is, since we have maybe, as you referred to, 3 or 4 buckets that we have to decide allocations on, let's do one bucket at a time. And since we're doing the internal request initially, I think we should deal with that first and then move to whatever bucket is necessary to deal with second, and then thirdly. Also, I would like to request that if all of the 2-person committees on this committee have their requests into you, could we get emailed to us a copy of their request so we can at least have an idea of where we're at? And then when you come in 2 weeks with the specific accumulation of everything, we'll have an informed and knowledgeable understanding of where you got that number.
Yeah, that's my understanding of how we're going to proceed. Make sure everyone has the information leading up to the meetings. I'm not sure if everyone's turned it in to Mr. Phillips yet or not. That's your point guy, and he'll send it out.
How many more 2-person committees have not responded yet?
I believe we need 2.
Okay, could you contact those 2-person committees, ask them if they could get that done within the next few days? It was supposed to be in, I think, a little while ago.
Today.
Yeah.
Today's the day.
So, I understand they might be a day or 2 or 3 late, but find out where they're at and when they can complete that. Once they get those in, then you could send those to us. Of all the other committees that have submitted this stuff, could we get copies of what they sent in?
I would like to do it all in one, so I'm not sending what I have and then sending what I get later. An important thing to consider here too, and this is important, is that as we're doing the application for the community support grant, we have that. We have the internal request. We also have our internal needs for budget that we've already voted on, or have been voted on rather, not me. The internal requests we are discovering as we are looking at them internally, aside from the input from the committee, we're discovering that there are elements within the internal requests that are appropriate for FEMA funding.
Whoa.
Well, then we can just disregard.
The point being is that for us to go through the exercise to determine what we want to do with the internal funds at this moment is premature, because we have not provided you, because it's just not in our timeline. We've not provided you all of the resources available outside of ARP to address our internal requests.
Well, and I appreciate that point. I think it's a good point. But even if we come up with the initial recommendations of these committees, forgetting about any other funding source that they might be able to get, FEMA or whatever, at least we'll have a ballpark. I know with the 16 people that Mr. Kenyon and I spoke with, they had X amount of dollars as a high end and a low end, and we were kind of in the middle of that. I guess what I'd like to do is find out how everyone else is doing. And I understand you don't have 2 of those yet, but I think we should make that a priority right now, to contact those 2 groups, ask them to get those into you, then just send us what they've sent in. We're not holding you to any commitment.
No.
We just want information so that we can start evaluating. So at our next meeting, we can come up with an informed decision on what we want to do next.
So Ms. Bates, please send yours in.
So
She's probably the first one.
to that, I will
Send
say
anything in?
that we do have some time constraints. So we'll have to talk about delineation of some tasks, because I'm staying focused on getting the application.
And I appreciate that, Peter. I'm not asking you to put a lot of time into this. I'm just asking you to forward to us the emails you get from the other committee members. It shouldn't take a lot of time.
I can do that, absolutely.
That'd be great.
Mr. Shepro?
Yeah, I guess I agree with, comments from Mr. Leonard and some others. I'm feeling frustrated because we talk about, timelines and so forth, and yet there seems to be this almost endless chicken and egg process. And in the meantime, we keep changing, we'll have it next week, we'll have it the other week. And this is a new program. I guarantee you that there will always be some question somebody could come up with that says, gee, we'd really like to know that before we proceed. But it just seems like the sum of all that is we're not really moving forward. We're doing a lot of running in place and moving sideways. And I guess, am I right that if we discovered we wanted to ask a question on the application that we didn't put on the initial one, we could fix it later, right? I mean, so the idea that we have to have everything perfect before we could launch it just seems like it's contributing to a process and delay. And, again, with respect to the internal requests, seems to me, even if there is another source available, you would still want to evaluate what the request is, whether it's appropriate, and, either winnow the list or prioritize the list. And it doesn't seem to me that that should be dependent on all these other moving parts that seem to slowing it down.
I think it's really that our efforts have been focused on getting the application open. So that's why, like, the survey idea isn't completed today, but it will be shortly. Mr. Martin?
I apologize. I must be missing something. If in fact, and I'm going to assume that it's the case, that some of these internal asks have other sources, independent of anything that the board members have done in the interview process, it would seem to me that one of the reasons we engaged Ernst & Young is so that they could look at that list and call out the ones that we can get money from other places. And that doesn't require anybody's participation here. That's our consultant sitting saying, no, we can get this money from FEMA, or no, this money can come from the state of Illinois. And every time they find another source, that creates more money that we have discretion with. And I was just, my frustration conceptually is, if I want to take a trip to Europe, before I determine how much money I want to spend on it, I want to find out what the brochures say it's going to cost me. And then I look at it and I say, well, no, we can afford London, but we can't afford Paris. How do we make any of these decisions without having in front of us the entire request of the community that we are seeking, or the community, meaning the county asks and the not-for-profit asks? How do we make any of these decisions when we've got nothing but moving targets here? We've got to have, to me, let's give the example in the absurd. If the asks come in for far less than we think, the answer is easy. If it comes in for far more, well, in a sense, the answer is easy, because we're gonna sit as a group and say, we're gonna give this percentage to the county, for the budgetary issue, this percent for internal asks, and this part for the 501c3s. But I don't see how we determine the budget for our European trip without having a brochure.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
Gums.
Chair.
Ms.
Mr.
Gums,
Chair.
and then Mr. Tepe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Martin, I couldn't have said it better myself. I do understand that we'd like to see these internal requests come in and review them. However, I was about to say that exactly what Mr. Martin said. I struggle with the concept of putting things into buckets without having the tap on. So I need to know what's coming, where the source is. So when we have our communities asking us for a certain dollar amount, again, it's easy if it's way low and it's easy if it's way high. That's an easy resolve. But if it's close, for me, my brain's going to say, well, internal requests here could be moved to a FEMA source, and then we could actually give money to everybody if it's close. So I have a hard time coming to a conclusion without all of that information. Until we get these asks from the community, I just do not have a comfortability in making those decisions just yet. I mean, tell me I'm wrong.
So the way I've seen, I guess, the process go down is we wait for everyone to give their recommendations and we pare that list down. And then we can have our consultants go through and look at them, see if there's other funding sources. And if something has another funding source, we can take that off of our recommended list and maybe plug something else in that was requested from a department. So do we do that first and then come up with a budget seems to be the question. And if that's the will of the committee, then that's the way we will go. If we want to go through all the requests and we've got, say, 15 that we all agree on and it's X amount of money, then that's what we'll do. Mr. Tepe.
Mr. Chair, Tepe here, thank you. First off, at this point, I would argue aggressively against establishing any kind of an allocation budget. I don't think there's any logic associated with saying, I'm going to look at a limit of internal projects versus external projects. Every project I've seen benefited Kane County, and I think that's the way we should look at them, at the way that they benefit Kane County. So saying that, you know, we want to establish some kind of an allocation of internal versus external, to me, just is not logical. We want to look at what's best for the county, okay? My biggest concern, though, is that unfortunately, in my opinion, the board made it pretty obvious that as much of the budget that they can use to fill in as much of these monies that they can use to fill in the budget gaps associated with the Kane County normal budget is what's probably going to happen. And I will be arguing extensively against that. These monies were not set to artificially fill in our budget gaps, whether present or future. And if we go down that path, we're just going to be kicking the can down the road and continuing to create problems. So aside from this committee, this board needs to take a good look at properly funding the county moving forward. And that matter needs to be considered too, but that's not on your agenda.
Not today. Madam Chair, did you have a comment? I thought I saw your hand.
Yeah, thank you. And as I mentioned both to Peter and to Jarrett, if we take a look at the $17,000 that's on there, $17 million, that's the last column. You have recently approved about a $3 million opportunity, a mandate actually, to do contact tracing that is coming out of this ARP money for public health. So that leaves you now, if all things remain the same on that chart, discretionary, about $14 million of discretionary money that so far is just not accounted for because of the $3 million for the contact tracing, which is a mandate.
Ms. Bates.
I believe that this 4.1% revenue growth rate has not been approved for 22, 23, 24. I believe we approved that only for
22's budget.
the current year that we're considering.
We can only approve for the previous fiscal year.
So therefore, I would like to see that number reduced. I don't believe 4.1% revenue growth rate is a realistic number for Kane County. I believe that 2.8 would be a more realistic number, which would leave us with more discretionary income. It would reduce the lost revenue from 63 million to, I don't know what, but it would be considerably less, maybe 50 million. Maybe we could increase, double our discretionary.
Well, in
bucket.
February or March, we should have a resolution requesting that lost revenue reimbursement, so you can make that pitch then.
Thank
That
you
would be
very
the
much.
appropriate time.
I'll be here.
Mr. Frost.
Well, I guess on that topic, I gotta assume, and I'm confident that Mr. Anzik's numbers are based on some quantifiable numbers, and I don't know where 2.8% came from, but you know, if I understand this
that was
money
from Joe
correctly, if I understand the program correctly, it was to, you know, this was the county's money to do several things with, and one of those is to make us whole from the COVID. So I think that's an appropriate amount, and you know, we have to watch our internal requests and make sure that they're somewhat related to COVID, and then our external requests. But you know, to Mr. Teppe's comments and Ms. Bates, I think I'm going to go with the finance director.
Are you just stretching? You got a question? Mr. Shepro.
You know, the comment about the grants, well, maybe Ernst & Young is in a position to identify other sources. Usually the best source of where other grants are available is the departments. And that's certainly something that they could work on independently. I know development department is always looking for grants. The sheriff's office is always looking for grants. And I don't think they need to wait for us to bring in a third party to say, I mean, the FEMA grants, at least in the law enforcement and first responder community, everybody knows about it. It's just a matter of identifying whether they're eligible and whether they can get it more efficiently and faster than some other source. I don't think that should hold up. I agree you want to find out, but I think our departments can do that.
Yeah, that's,
Well, and to Ken's point, I'm sorry, Mavis.
that's okay.
I know I'm interrupting.
Go ahead.
Why not just simply ask all of the department heads and electeds who have made requests, whether they investigated other sources? And that would be a heck of a starting point, and would, yeah, and we're supposed to have done it anyway. I didn't even realize that. So what, you know, I take back my comment that Ernst & Young ought to be doing it if we've already requested it, but well, I've said enough, I think.
Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to wish happy birthday to Ms. Bates.
It was my
Secondly,
King County birthday.
oh, your King County, okay. Well, that's important also.
Yes, thank you very much.
But more importantly, I'd like to point out that these projected revenue and expense reimbursements are projections. They're not mandates. We don't have to use them. They're a point of reference, just as the internal requests are, just as external requests are. So let's see what the requests are. Let's get a combined look at the whole picture and then decide what we are willing to do in each area. You know, just because it says 4.1% revenue growth rate, which I agree Mr. Anzig is in agreement with, doesn't mean we have to follow that. It's just a projection and it's a reference point. So I think people have to realize that. And I guess my last question for Ms. Bates is, you said, let's use 2.8. I'd like to know the basis for your projection of 2.8.
That's actually what Anzik.
It came from Mr. Anzik.
Well, he had a number of them, but he
Yes.
said we can use the 4.1.
That's, according to the
And we could
interim,
use the 2.8. What I'm saying is, if you want to use the 2.8, tell me why we should use that, not the 4.1.
Mr. Chairman, according to the interim ruling, which I read from beginning to end, except the very end, which was just too boring. I believe the 4.1% is something that was proposed as the maximum that could be used in the bill. So 4.1% referred to the entire United States as some number of lost revenue. Mr. Anzik came to us with the number 2.8% as a more realistic number for King County. So I would like to go back to that 2.8% that Mr. Anzik brought to us.
I don't think, you know, and you could be right on that, Ms. Bates, but I don't think he said 2.8 was a more realistic number. He said that per the ARPA regulations that we could use up to 4.1%, and he was comfortable with that. So that's why we as a,
Well, are we comfortable?
All right, well,
Yes.
I think this is, again, a conversation that's more germane to when we actually have that resolution in front of us.
I agree.
So we can hash all these things out and figure on any percentage we like.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Leonard.
but thank you for the conversation. It was fruitful, and I think we got some clear indications of the will of the committee on some of these issues that we're working on internally. So that's what we were looking for, and I really
Mr.
appreciate it. I have
Mr. Chair,
nothing.
Guns, really quick.
Oh, Ms. Gums.
I just want to, just a thought going forward with our next couple of very important meetings. I know nobody likes to be in meetings for a very long time, but I would really like to see us come in and meet for an extended period of time, bring our lunches, whatever we got to do, because it sounds like the coming meetings are going to be a deep dive into some things, and we can't do that in an hour. I don't know how everybody feels about that, but I'd like to see that happen.
Well, again, I don't know exactly what the agenda looks like for the 22nd, but I'll offer to bring in some Sanchez family homemade tamales for everyone.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I'm saying it in public, so I got to hold to it. I was thinking I'd have some today, but it just didn't happen. Sorry. But yeah,
Quantity, sir?
we'll talk. We'll talk outside the meeting. All right. Nothing for new business.
I have some.
Mr. Kenyon.
Yeah. When we were talking to the health department and some of these others, it seems to me that what we need is a place to train people. I mean, the health department can't train all of them. I think the colleges could do that. And we've contacted ECC, and that only because I live there. And there really would be helpful in setting up programs to train, I mean, even let's say for the clerk's office, provide training. And I think that if we had scholarship money and they would do it, they would set the criteria, they would do the scholarship, and people might be willing to go to work again if they got training that didn't cost them too much.
I think you've mentioned that before, Mike. I think it's a good idea. So I would say,
I will keep going with it. Michael Isaacson has talked to these people, the ECC people.
well, work with Peter, talk to him, see if we can get some ideas together and some kind of formal proposal that could be presented to the committee. Other than that, I think we have no new business or old business. No need for executive session. Kenyon
I move
moves
we
to
adjourn
adjourn.
to get Miss Bates
8 seconds.
on the streets to celebrate the birthdays.
All those in favor,
Aye.
Call.
thank you for being here.
Thank you, everybody.